What's up y'all, Doe here, and today I'm making a video on the new trial explaining how it works and how to actually defeat it, and there'll be a big emphasis on beating it quickly, so if you want some tips on surviving it, that'll come a bit later in the video. But for starters, let's go ahead and go over the modifiers of this behemoth fight. And right before I do that, I want to give a really big thank you to Dauntless for sponsoring this video. Thank y'all so much for, again, supporting the content and making a great game that I've enjoyed playing for a long time. I appreciate that. And also, y'all, if you haven't already, be sure to download Dauntless at playdauntless.r/OhDough. It's a free game, not pay to win, and it's ever evolving. It's a fun time, so give it a shot. Now, the behemoth that we'll be fighting is going to be Shroud, and this can have up to 5 modifiers if you're fighting it on Dauntless difficulty. On the normal difficulty, it's going to have 2, but I'm going to go ahead and discuss these starting with what's on the normal version of this fight. For starters, you're going to have a new mechanic called Frost Mollusks, and these inhabit an area and will lay trails of dangerous frost slime wherever they traverse. This frost slime, if you walk into it, will freeze you. And these frost mollusks in their current state do not work in a fashion that most players would like to see, but they are a very welcome mechanic in my opinion just because they do change the playstyle and they aren't that bad. In their current state, they're kind of annoying because they spawn on top of you and they can also block your rolling before they spawn. These are factors that aren't very fun, but they have been addressed already and they will be fixed in a later patch. So this makes me happy and I'm cool with it. Now, if you can't handle these at the moment and you want to just like not worry about getting frozen, which by the way, getting frozen, you are stuck there for a while. You can spam spacebar to get out, and you also get stripped of Predator if you have it equipped. So this can be rough because if you're frozen, you can get one shot by Shroud, because if it hits you on certain difficulties, you get one shot. So it's not a fun time. But if you want to avoid this mechanic, you can run a simple +3 warmth, and using this cell will prevent you from getting frozen whatsoever. Now, if you're not using this cell, and actually if you're playing in general, what I would suggest is to try and just kite the behemoth away from this mollusks. So when Shroud's in the air, try and back away, try and get a better position, and then just get away from the mollusks at all costs. The next modifier is going to be Aftershock, and this was on the previous trial, which was Shocked on the Zyga, and the way tremors work is that behemoth slam attacks cause targeted shockwaves. These shockwaves are paired with 3 different attacks. The first will be a ground slam that can happen in 2 different speed variations, a slow and a fast one, and there will also be an air slam that is the same thing, a slow and a fast air slam can happen. Now the third variation, or the third slam, will be a multiple wing swipe followed by a wing twirl and jump, and once it lands from that, it'll send out shockwaves. And the cool thing about shockwaves right now is you can actually jump over them. It's somewhat risky in some cases, but it's also a nice mechanic for some weapons like the hammer, which can do a blast jump. So this can add for some pretty nice outplay if you want to abuse that or use it, which is pretty cool, and it's a pretty neat mechanic so far in my opinion. And this is actually only really useful for the third slam I mentioned, which is the wing twirl jump away from you sort of move. As for the first 2 slams, which are the ground and air slams, these attacks are not so easy to dodge, but you can dodge them every single time if you are dodging at the right time, and that's going to be the last second. If you dodge at the very last second before it hits the ground, you will dodge both the tremor and the slam. And this can be done by either rolling forwards, rolling backwards, rolling to the side, and those will all work for you. Personally, I much prefer just rolling backwards so I can stay towards the face of Shroud, and it actually helps me avoid the goo in most cases, which by the way, even if you dodge the slam and the tremors that happen from the slam, there's still a decent chance you'll get hit by the goo, and it's not fun in my opinion right now. I wish the goo had a different mechanic and a different way of working to where it wouldn't hit you after you dodge everything else under the sun and that hits you. But that's just how I feel about it. And that's how you dodge the tremors, which it might seem really unfair at first, but trust me, once you get it down, you can dodge this move every single time as long as you're just aware of how it works and your timing is really good all the time. So just be a robot, you can dodge all the attacks, you'll be fine, trust. Moving on to the modifiers only on the Dauntless difficulty, we're going to have Combustion, and this is where Behemoth's physical attacks will set Slayers on fire. And to some of y'all that might not be that bad, it might not seem that difficult, but there's also a modifier called Inferno, and this is where Behemoth on fire effects last longer and deal more damage. By the way, so this makes it to where if you get hit, you can't really just roll it off instantly. You have to actually pop a potion and then start rolling it off, because if you just try and roll it off initially, you're going to die. I found that it was just not the play, and instead, if you can get a potion off, that is the best course of action you can possibly do, because that can actually help you survive it more often than not. Now, if you want to avoid this mechanic entirely, what you can do is just, for one, either not get hit. If that's always an option, you can just not get hit, you'll be fine. Or you can bring 2 cells. The first cell will be Molten, either have +5 or +6. That will give you a full duration as long as you collect the orbs whenever they spawn. And the orbs will give you fire immunity, movement speed, and 20% attack speed, which is why this is a really good cell, especially in this scenario. Now, the last option is one I don't really recommend because it does not help you with damage, but it is really easy to maintain because it's just on your gear. And that will be Fireproof. So Fireproof at +6 prevents being set on fire at all. So if you want, you can use that, but again, it's not really helpful for getting fast kill times, and that's a really important thing in Dauntless. But if you want to use it, hey, you do you. Now, the last modifier is going to be something called Fortifications, and this does not really seem to be a big deal, but anyway, this is going to be where objects created by behemoths have increased health. This modifier doesn't really seem to be affecting the clones from what I can tell, but then again, I'm not too positive, but what I do think it affects is going to be the orbs that Shroud creates. Those orbs do have a ton of health in comparison to the clones, for sure. So I'm pretty sure it doesn't affect the clones, and instead the orb is what is getting the increased health, making it really hard to break in some cases, especially on repeaters if you have no empowerment. Which is kind of annoying because you can't get empowerment off the orb, but that is just how it is for now. Anyway, let's go move on to what you should be bringing to these Shroud fights. The first thing you should look at is going to be what weapon element and the weapon type you want to bring to this fight. So Shroud's an Umbral Behemoth, and that means that Radiant weapons are strong against this certain Behemoth. And the best Radiant weapon at the moment is going to be the Valmer weapon set. This set's really good since it has a really good stat such as Aether Hunter, followed by a power slot and a utility slot for the cell slots. And the unique equip is also not bad. So once charged, your next attack will deal 550 bonus radiant damage, and the charge rate increases with current health. All that means is if you have more health, you have a faster charge rate. And some of you might be asking why not pick Resecure weapons, and the reason is they don't really have the best slots for most weapons, and they also have a stat called Cunning, which in the current state is not in the best spot for most weapons. And speaking of weapons, I'm going to go ahead and give my 2 top picks for the best weapons in this week's trials, which is going to be the hammer, and I think either the axe or repeaters, which I really don't think repeaters can get a fast time, but Frugal keeps telling me I've gotten a fast time before. I don't believe him. Anyway, I think that hammer and probably the axe are going to be the best picks, and that's because in this trial, Overpower is a really good cell. That's because you can actually boop Shroud during the enraged state, during its glide, and this gives you a really big window for Overpower, and that's going to be where the axe and the hammer will just slaughter in this trial. Which, to be clear, any weapon can beat this trial, it's just that the axe and the hammer, in my opinion, will do the best and get the fastest time. But regardless, you're going to need a good build for any weapon you pick, and that's going to require some good cells. And the cells I'm choosing are ones that help with getting faster kill times, which the weapon you choose will sort of change the cells you pick, but for the most part, you're going to want to have cells like Etheric Attunement, Conduit, Evasive Fury, or Molten, and Predator. And if you're not playing repeaters, you're going to want to have some Aether Hunter, Overpower, and for some weapons, I like to use Conditioning, like for the sword, for the axe, and actually the hammer too, just because of how the build works out. But if you're not playing those weapons and instead playing the repeaters, you're going to want to have Berserker. This cell is really nice on the repeaters, and it can be maintained almost the entire fight, if not the entire fight. And it's just a really good cell to have on repeaters. And to get this cell, along with other cells, specials, and modifiers, you have to go to the Lady Luck store, which is located at Lady Luck. This store is where you can spend skill marks on either cells, specials, or modifiers, or gilded marks on cosmetic items. And the nice part about all this is that the skill marks are only from the normal version of Trials, and then the gilded marks are from the Dauntless version of Trials. So skill marks give you power, and gilded marks give you cosmetics, and that's just a really good system to have in my opinion, because not many folks are being excluded from the content. And overall, I like how it works, just like I like how Trials works. I think that Trials was a really big step for Dauntless, and it's worked out pretty well so far. The first week was a little rough, but this week is much better. My only concern is that Aftershock is on the normal version of Trials, and Aftershock is a really hard modifier, like I said earlier. And honestly, I feel the biggest difference between Trials difficulty from normal to Dauntless is going to be just the fact that Dauntless has more health. So I guess I like the fact that last week didn't have Tremors on the normal version and instead just had it on Dauntless, and I feel that this week should have been the exact same way. But overall, this week is much more enjoyable, and I feel that many folks can say that even after grinding it and just dealing with all this stuff, this week is nowhere near as frustrating as last week, and honestly, it's actually pretty fun to do. My biggest problem right now is actually the fact that I have no consumables. I have no materials to make potions. That's like my current issue with Trials, is that it takes so many pots to do trials, and I don't have enough to maintain that. So that's actually my biggest issue. It's like trials is good. It's just that getting consumables for trials is a big pain, which, by the way, if you want to get consumables, the best way to do that, in my opinion, will be fighting Lesser Ember Main, just because you get so many materials if you do it correctly. If you want a video on that, I have a video made actually. Check it out if you want to. But y'all, that's the end of this video. If you liked it, leave a like. If you want to, drop a comment. It helps with the channel a lot. And if you like this video, if you want to see some more like it, be sure to subscribe to this channel for Dauntless content. That's what I do here. And if you think you might like Dauntless, be sure to download it at playdauntless.com/r/OhDough. Again, it's free to play, not pay to win, and it's a really fun time. So I strongly suggest it. If you guys like live content, I do stream on Twitch. It's at twitch.tv/OhDough. I'm a Twitch partner and a Dauntless partner. And being a Dauntless partner means I have my own flare. If you want that, subscribe to the channel because people like the flare. So if you want that, that's how you get it. It's the best way at least. And I do have an Epic Games support code. That's just going to be OhDough on the Epic Games Store or in the Dauntless in-game store. Using that supports me, and I greatly appreciate it. Which, by the way, that code does have like a 14-day expiration date, something like that. So whenever you're using a code like that, it expires after 14 days. Be sure to reuse someone's code or my code. And lastly, thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next one. Peace.